Jim Joyce. It's Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.
It's Wednesday.
You know, I went back and I was showing my son. I went, oh, nice.
Surprise.
HealthBeacon Boston.
Epic. I knew there was something going on. I didn't know what was happening. It was like Eugene was dressed up.
Well, listen, it was time to get out of the garage, right? So
I figured you were trying to impress the ladies.
That's right. And it was such a warm welcome. It was amazing. So and we're gonna grab a drink afterwards. So
that's awesome. A Bartesian.
Of course.
I'll follow the crowd.
Yeah, what is it? If you point, there's a Bartesian. The Bartesian drink maker is from Hamilton Beach. They have a kind of Nescafe style.
All right.
Awesome.
I'm in. So there's the surprise. Now I'm gonna go to where you've taken me.
I love it. That's too funny. Have you been working out of there?
No, I just came for this, and actually I have another webinar recording right after that.
Awesome.
So let me just put my headphones in.
Yeah, cool. Too funny. You're a guest, man.
Oh man, I don't know. This is not working, but there we go. Hold on.
Awesome.
All right, now we're back. So, I mean, what a way to finish off season 6 out of the HealthBeacon. So this will be the HealthBeacon takeover by Eugene. HealthBeacon Boston office takeover by Eugene episode. So you have no idea.
Yeah. So what's your? I had no idea. I had no notion. I'm so caught up in my own self.
No,
I'm just chasing my own tail.
I did warn Laura and team not to say anything to you. So this was going to be a surprise, and it worked out. So there you go.
That's awesome. What do you think? What do you think of the HealthBeacon team?
Fantastic.
What do you think of the team?
I said fantastic. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah.
Perfect.
No, so I mean, I've actually been here for a Health Excel event a number of years back, if you remember, right? But my younger one, we're visiting a bunch of colleges. So my younger one is here, Shane. So Laura gave a little tour and what the machine does, and it was fantastic. So for her, she was very impressed as well. So kudos, you impressed a teenager with your technology.
It's a good location
as well.
And
yeah,
it's a good location there in South Boston.
Yeah, no,
it's
agreed.
Vibey,
definitely vibey. Yeah, and we haven't done one of these in a while, like recap episodes. Like I think a couple of seasons.
Yeah, no, I know they're a lot of work.
They are. So I hope
they're a lot of work. I'm totally ready.
All right,
ready.
Awesome.
When have I not been prepared? as I scramble.
True.
But like before we go into that, let's do a little check-in on the travels of Eugene here. So you've done what? Like what's been your movements in the States?
Honestly, only Boston actually. So I've been in New Jersey, and then obviously a bunch of started to set up meetings in New Jersey and New York, and then this trip is partially your coach trip, just meeting a number of individuals, but also with my younger one seeing colleges. So we went to see Northeastern, BC, BU, a number of others. So and then we're back Friday. We're gonna just train it back. Actually, it was a great ride. Millen from Celerity was also driving here, so we drove up on Monday. That was great. Got to then Monday night, kind of the pharma crew. Yeah, pharma crew. Sven and team, Sridhar,
and
Amaya, what else? Millen, Sven. It was a small crew, but it was good to get out.
Yeah, and is life all back to how's Boston? Is it like, are people out? Are there networking events? Still kind of quiet?
I think it still seems pretty quiet, but again, I think Mondays were a lot of places are just closed in general, I think. And it was a little eerie. Like I was in New York, the week before, and it's like hustle and bustle, right? Like, Here it's been a little
Right.
quieter than I expected, but I think people are not coming into the offices just yet, right?
Right.
So yeah, and some of the people that I'm meeting, they're like, well, I'm only going to be in the office on a Tuesday, right? Versus like every day, which is
Right.
understandable.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
but it's, I mean, nonetheless, it's great to to be out and about. So yeah,
The opening of America.
the reopening of America, right? Yeah, I
Right.
think next week there's going to be some event in New York. I know with Health Excel we're planning things actually here in October in Boston, right, as well. So
Right.
so lots of stuff happening.
Awesome.
But,
Awesome. So yeah, and then and I know I'm sorry I'm interviewing you here, but your coach. So your coach is what's the game plan right now? What are you publicly disclosing and the progress? I was thinking that we should do like a total your coach episode. That's what in my head I was thinking we should do it.
that's the next webinar that I'm recording.
Yeah.
We're actually going to be recording a webinar with Dr. Sandy from Functional Medicine Health Coaching Institute, talking about exactly what is really health coaching, right? So maybe stay tuned. We're going to actually record that today. We're throwing that webinar up, and it's actually targeted towards individuals and small employers. What does health coaching mean to you? Because as Marina and I joke around, if we just had a penny every time it says, well, health coaching is like a fitness instructor, right? Well, it's not, right? So where we're at, we're finally starting with some early adopters in a couple of weeks on kind of the small and medium-sized businesses and employers, just sort of fine-tuning some of the onboarding stuff. And I think part of this is it's a highly personalized health and wellness coaching service, and it's personalized to you as an individual, right? It's not a cookie cutter approach because everybody has. It's actually fascinating, right? Like this week I'm traveling and my whole schedule is off, and I kind of like, yes, Marina is my coach, but it's very different, right? When you're husband and wife and you're a coach, than you're an actual health coach that you're paying for, that you're really accountable for across, for a different reason than because she's my wife.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're getting cranking. It's crazy, like almost 2,000 coaches on the platform now. It's just, so we're very, very much focused on kind of that supply side and validation, verification of those coaches and things like that. So yeah. But thanks. We should do a your coach.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do it because I am fascinated by it, and like I'm sort of interested to watch you and Marina build out the company. But like the being a health coach like must be so rewarding, right? Like that must be, talk about giving someone something. Like it must be like, I don't know, is it a stressful job? But it seemed like it would have a lot of reward.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of interesting, right? As we're exploring, like it is. And I'm not a coach, right? I've taken a 9 months.
You are, right?
A nine week. So this is the interesting part, right? And that's actually what's happening with health coaching. I kind of joke around. It's been like cuckoo voodoo, right? I mean, you do something for yourself, and then you say you're a coach, which is fantastic, and that works, and it works for others. In order for you to be recommended as a coach to our employer base, you would have to go through a number of qualifications and verifications through your coach. So it is a rewarding job. I think it's also very taxing, right? It is a lot of empathy. It's a lot of asking questions and leading you as an individual, because deep inside, what you need to get done, right? So how do you really extract it? And I kind of joke around that it's a little bit of this like non-clinical psychotherapy, right? And that's the key, right? Health coaches it's a non-clinical service, right? Now, doctors can become health coaches and get their national board certification. Nurses can do the same. We have a lot of nurses on the platform that became health coaches. Fitness instructors as well, right? Because they're also realizing it's not just about, the exercise. It's actually, how do you actually help establish what that individual goals are? How do you keep them motivated? And the intrinsic motivation is within you, right? It's within that individual. How do you expose it, and et cetera? So, but we, in talking to a lot of sort of digital therapeutic companies, that are also surrounding themselves with health coaches, when a typical, it's a 40-hour week, right? As an employee, when you cannot do coaching 40 hours a week nonstop. It's not a production kind of work, right? I mean, it does take energy out of you, right? So that's, I like this, like 5-minute your coach, pimping and educating.
I was always fascinated by that with with clinicians. Like I always thought I would have been beside not being qualified in it, but as a poor clinician, because they have to kind of see so many people. Like they have to take on the whole world's problems, so like 50 patients coming through during the course of a day. I give you 10 minutes each, some admin time. And it's like boom, 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 boom. Whereas the patients are coming in, and for them, it's, they might have given up their whole day. They might be hearing really tough news.
And you got 8 minutes.
You got 8 minutes, right? Whereas the health coach feels a little bit more like, it's almost like I don't know, maybe it isn't, maybe it's kind of traumatic, but I always thought it's kind of like a quite motivational, like you might get energy from it.
I mean, it is. And actually, I mean, quite a lot of physician practices are starting to leverage health coaches, because to your point, you spend 8 to 10 minutes right inside. And so it's everything from, again, helping that individual and patient to understand and reach their goals, not only clinical, right? Because a lot of that drives, and it's all together, right? You're the holistic you. And so health coaches are starting to take a lot of that burden, and they can spend not 8 minutes, but up to full 45 minutes to an hour, right? And not once every 3 months, or if you're chronic deviated, once a month, maybe a week, right? Every week you spend an hour. So yeah.
Well,
so
I can't wait till we get the product, so when you get the kind of medium-sized business product ready, because I think a few of our, I think of the employees coming back into the workplace now, moving around, thinking about how do we re-engineer the offices, re-energize people towards, the task of coming in. And there's a lot going through people's heads right now. So I feel like doing health coaching, like having health coaching as kind of a business benefit, just makes tons of sense right now. And I think it's out there, but it's not out there, kind of is my feeling.
Agreed. I think everybody's talking about it, don't really understand exactly and what it does and what the benefit is. And so, I mean, that's actually pretty interesting that right after this, we're recording exactly that as a webinar. So stay tuned.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so let's list out, so this is a season recap. So there's a little bit of your coach and a little bit of a season recap here.
Love it.
A little bit of HealthBeacon. We're in the HealthBeacon office in Boston.
That's right. Love it.
So let's talk. We'll kind of attempt to list out the guests and kind of like get some salient points about everything. I'm finding right now that it's just like I'm doing all kinds of problem solving from this podcast. Like I'm like, oh, that's like what, sorry. Like too many things coming out. Oh, that's what, Frederick, who is it? Frederick said.
Yeah, we had Frederick said, yeah.
This is what Frederick said, or this was a clinician that, that came on that satisfied this way. And I'm actually, I mean, you probably have a better brain than I do. I'm struggling to compartmentalize. We've done so many of these, because how many interviews have we done now, or kind of sessions?
I think we have uploaded like 66 or 67 episodes. That includes like just us as well, right? Et cetera. I mean, that is a lot, right?
Right.
It's kind of crazy. Like started as a complete joke and turned into a whole career. We have sponsors now that Dan Kendall is now injecting into our podcast, so we don't have to repeat the whole thing today. But
yeah. We're accidental podcasters here.
Exactly. And I'm I'm kind of thinking through how we do we end this, do we not? But we'll talk about that. So we're definitely doing season 7, right? We're still on for season 7.
Season 7. I think that we might start to run our course there at that stage. I don't know what you think.
Lucky 7s. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to time it for the October event in Dublin, I think. Season, our show finale. I don't know.
So
anyway,
We've got the list
Yeah,
here.
so I have the list. I can take us through the list.
Awesome.
And the one thing I realized, because we're always kind of like, we're so American centric, including Americans in Europe. So what I got out of this, 50% of us of our episodes this season was about from Europeans. So we mixed it up this time around. So
not just
we'll point.
Yanks.
Exactly. We did start with an American, so Sridhar Iyengar.
Yeah.
For full disclosure, he's also an investor in your coach and a good friend.
Okay.
Great guy.
Full disclosure, I consider him a good friend as well. Like, hopefully he's it's the same.
So hopefully he's nodding his head right now. That's right.
So Sridhar, I mean, first of all, is an amazing contributor to the whole digital health tech system and ecosystem, and actually one of the kindest guys, right? Like, you feel like he just a guy, you meet him and he wants good people to win, right?
Yep.
Like, that's how I feel. Like, every time I talk to him, it's just like, hey, it's just very real. Like, I don't know how he's not overrun with people looking to kind of spend time with him, constantly.
I think he's very humble, right? I think that's the other aspect of it. Obviously smart as heck, right? I mean, him and Sunny Wu, I mean, right. I think we even talked about it on the show, that it was one of the first, I put it in quotes, digital health devices, because I don't even know what digital health means these days, right? But let's chalk it off to that. I think on that episode we talked quite a lot about his transition, right? When you're a CTO of a company and coming from more of a scientific engineering mind, and now stepping into the CEO role, and what does that take, and how does that transition? So I thought that's always a fascinating journey, right? For any individual and any entrepreneur to switch hats across the career.
Yeah, and the way he unpacks it and thinks about it, it's a very kind of almost like scientific approach to the process. He said something during the that stuck with me, which was, he says, you always want to be selling infrastructure, but people don't buy infrastructure, so you have to turn the infrastructure into a product. And I thought that was like absolutely fascinating. He got that advice from like who was the guy that was in with Steve Jobs? Your man. My memory will fail me.
My memory is horrible too. Don't put me in a spot like that.
With the guy that was the CEO of Apple, he talked about like, you don't buy.
Sully.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have my brain is a few years younger than yours, so I still got it, just a few.
But that was genius. That was genius in my mind. The idea, like
Yep.
You have to sell a product and then turn it into infrastructure, long term, until it stays with it. So I thought that was good.
And maybe one other thing on this, it's funny because like I always joke around with Marina. I'm like, I'm just gonna go for like a 5-minute walk. She's like, well, is it really worth it? Like, do a longer one. I'm like, well, 5 minutes is better than nothing, right? And she kind of laughs. And Sridhar's comment was, on the data side, some data is better than no data, right? And so
Brilliant, because he's right. Like a lot of our, there's this like idea of this like perfect data, and then the traditional system wants to discount it, or it's not a randomized control setting or clinical setting. We're saying, hang on a second, like, how do we take signals out of the data that's available to us? And some data is better than no data, which is you have to believe is true, right? You have to believe it's true.
Exactly.
I love it.
All right, so should we move on? Episode 2. We had Jonah Comstock. I think, was it our first journal? No, we had Mimi. We had Mimi as a journalist. Remember, from Sifted, Mimi Billings. Right. But
we had Mimi Billings for part of Financial Times, which was the or her blog is.
Yes, it's Sifted EU, which is part of Financial Times. But I mean, Jonah brings his wisdom, right? I think we talked a bit about some valuations does not actually mean anything at the end of the day, right? Which I think also was a theme kind of across our, if I look at the names, like we did talk quite a bit about everything from SPACs to virtual care to value, right?
Right. Yeah, what struck me with Jonah was he said, and he was talking about that when you look at, he's kind of giving almost like the whole like, history of digital health tools and following him as a journalist. And he talked about how that largely whether a digital health tool was effective enough all relied, was almost like 80% whether the implementation was done well, whether it was executed well, which is fascinating because it's not like a medicine that you take it in, your body processes it. It's like the tool has to be introduced to people, explained, understood. The tech has to work. And
the other aspect, which is luckily was in our notes, I think you said something like 1 million point solutions for 1 million conditions, right? And this is back to a little bit of the holistic health coaching concept also, right? But because as a human being, you just cannot handle 27 different tools for too many different things. And so we're starting to see the consolidation, right, into productized platforms or infrastructure, right? Back to this.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to go back and listen to that podcast again because he was just knocking stuff out, like, time, like it was just
tons of wisdom.
Like an anthropologist of digital health tech or something. It was kind of like,
well, I think he learned with the best, right? Brian Dolan was his, Moby Health News. He joined Brian, I think. So probably, and then he stuck around while Brian moved on. So
yeah, and he has in common with Sridhar, just like seemed like a very nice, genuine guy that like wants the space to win. Like,
One quick thing on that, just to maybe close off. I liked how we asked him about, so what's the secret to pitching to journalists? And his comment was, well, journalists are people too, right? So at the end of the day, it's about building those relationships, just like with anybody else. So
yeah.
Cool. So we hop over to our dear friend in Europe, right? In Vienna, Frederick de Bong, serial entrepreneur, building fintech, insurtech, health tech business, right? They're doing pretty well. I see they're pumping quite a lot of stuff out there now.
Yeah, he blew me away. Like I thought, I mean, first of all, he was the first person that mixed a gin and tonic during our episode. He actually went and made a drink during the episode.
That's right. We shamed him. That's right.
Yeah, he was like, for me, like he said something which was like, he was talking about partnerships, that like all these like digital health, tech companies or pharma partnerships. He's like their primary goal is to kill trees from the contracts that are signed associated with the partnerships. So he was learning how so many of these partnerships, sound great, but end up in nothing. And if you can control, more of the system, right? Like, I thought that was fascinating. In his last company, the company before, the My Sugar, talking about, having people like him as a diabetic and, the fact that people like actually put tattoos of the product of his last company onto
that was, I remember, and I think we talked about this in the show, but like, I remember his speech, I think it was at Arctic 15, and he presented this one slide of the tattoos, and I'm like, holy crap! I mean, talk about love for that product, right? That's pretty amazing. I think you need to ask your patients on HealthBeacon to do the little HealthBeacon tattoo, or I don't know.
Totally.
And then he talked Min Sung's advice of 7 deadly sins, but you'll have to watch the episode if you're listening to this for what that is. So that's the cliffhanger.
Yeah, I totally use that. I use that today to do that advice. Talking about like, hey, let's not overestimate what people are willing to do here. Like, we need to make this easy for people. I thought that was cool.
Exactly.
Okay. Chris Hogg.
Chris Hogg, I think this is where he's just such an avid, first of all, like reads every S1, and I just follow him instead of reading it myself, right? So for the IPOs, I mean, he's one of the OGs, right? From the kind of quantified self days. And I loved his, we sort of rewound all the way back around, I'll say, the movement from that quantified self with Health 2.0. And it's like the evolution of, okay, well, great, there's great technology, but then what the hell is the problem we're trying to solve? And yes, indeed, in many cases that tech push does work because the tech finds the problem that's been there, but just not exposed. And then the next evolution now he talked about is from, tech problem now really to value, which has been a lot of our discussions in digital health and valuations and what does that really mean, right? And then what else? One of the other pieces that I think we talked about, and that was a key takeaway is, if you rewind back a decade, you had to build everything from scratch, right? If you were starting a health tech business. Now it's like the Lego pieces, right? Like you can take pieces of different infrastructure services and bundle things together into a novel health service, right? Which is pretty amazing, actually.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, I thought what blew me away with him was, like, again, huge brain. You know, he did, like you and like myself, like pharma to entrepreneurism, you know, transition. I thought that was the way he described, you know, how he was able to kind of like almost like teach, you know, help Propeller understand how to talk to like pharmaceutical companies. Like, he just articulated it in a very elegant way. And then this idea that when he talked about when they spent all kinds of money trying to get the first patient from a Facebook ad to acquire the Propeller product and actually set it up and successfully, you know, kind of use the technology, and that kind of whole consumer, you know, acquisition of digital health tech to successfully using it. Kind of, I almost felt like I was with them as he was describing. That's cool.
Well, and especially now that the HealthBeacon has a DTC partner, right? So that kind of
wheels are turning.
Wheels are turning, exactly. Keith Grimes, I forgot what he used, but something like some G's, like he said, you know, he's a GP, giant, something like he called him 4Gs or something. Oh, gamer, right? Smart dude. I mean, Babylon is, you know, is his workplace, right? He talks about AI, but then still, you know, humans are still needed and involved.
Yeah, no, he seemed like it just, you know, fascinating. Actually, I remember him talking specifically about how he was using like he was talking about treating someone with sleep problems and not, you know, and by, you know, managing them a certain way that they avoided going on medications that they would have needed to. And by the, you know, the monitoring or something, by having real-time monitoring and seeing that someone actually was sleeping, he was able to, as a GP, handle them better. And then now he's in, you know, as a medic, you know, inside Babylon, you know, doing phenomenal. But that just stuck with me.
Yeah, and I think this is where when I first met him, we talked about, because I was wearing that Basis watch, which was a startup health portfolio company back, you know, in I think their early cohort. So that's how we met, and that's what like impressed me about his, you know, how to leverage some of these technologies in the daily practice, right? That's the thing. To me, Keith was like a doer, not just a talker on stage all the time, right? Which many people do.
Right.
It's like, okay, how do you get shit done?
Awesome.
Yeah, see, it's weird. And Keith is from UK, right? So not European Union anymore, but in, you know, that side of the pond, nonetheless.
You're probably a little bit, maybe a little depressed this week with their almost narrow victory. For them.
But oh yeah, we didn't even celebrate it on the show. Congrats to Emmy. I was getting all kinds of WhatsApp messages with videos of, you know, shout out to all the Italian friends.
Yeah, she's delighted, and we watched. I mean, just was awesome because we were in Italy, you know, watching it.
That's
you know,
right.
Both games in Italy. Like it was magic, you know. But
awesome.
We don't want to have Keith's session be too much about the Italians winning.
No. I mean, I don't mind. We can do a whole session on Italians. I love it. But let's move on to Germany. Lena Venner, right? So she's with First Minute. A brilliant woman. And I like how you kind of put her in a spot, like, you know, build or be in a VC, right? And like, you know, I'm best at what I do here, right? That was a fantastic answer, because, you know, I think some people try to pretend, right, and say, well, you know, I want to get back to something or whatever. Like, no BS. Like, this is where she excels, right?
Yeah, the style. You know, you could see why you'd appreciate her as a kind of a seed or early stage investor. The style was very intelligent, kind of empathetic. But her advice was the best. Which I asked her, I said, you know, what advice would you give to an entrepreneur in a village outside of Sweden? She said, you know, move to Sweden.
Move out.
Yeah,
exactly.
Move to Stockholm, right? Yeah, Stockholm, it was like the move to Stockholm.
Yep, exactly.
That was brilliant. I mean, it was just so, you know, like it just is stuck with me. It's like you live in a village outside of Stockholm and you're an entrepreneur, what advice? Move to Stockholm. Beautiful.
You know what I think I sort of planted the seed, but then all three of us kind of came up with the 4 T's, and I've been actually using this left and right now, right? Like, to me, that framework of like startup assessment, right? So the 4 T's of team, TAM, tech, and traction. I think Lena's contribution was the traction. It was like, boom, like,
I love that.
That was, which makes sense, right? All those components together at different stages,
Right.
the value. Cool. Well, now maybe move on to your rock star. That was a fascinating discussion with Keisha, right?
Yeah, she was awesome. She kind of jumped on. She's always high energy. I thought she was walking through kind of interesting perspective on taking the thinking about it, because she had worked with a lot of asthma companies in the pharmaceutical industry, and we talked about joining Digital Health as a board member, and what do you see her role and what's going on. So really great perspective, high energy. Yeah, I don't know. My takeaway, obviously, I know her quite well, is like just having enthusiasm, energy, plus expertise at the board level, and and obviously diversity of thinking, right? Like that was essential.
Yep. Yeah. Nothing more to add aside from us spending probably more than half of it talking about pharma and budgets and how is decision making for innovation done, which I can go on forever for it, but I think you had to stop me at some point. We hop over to somebody who I reconnected with after many years, who is also, just like Meg Fitzgerald at the time, was also responsible for as I joked around, start of my European vacation 10 years ago. So Glenn Stetton, Chief Innovation Officer at Evernorth.
Massive role, seemed like a very down to earth guy, very, I loved, and I promised I would do this and I haven't done it yet, but I loved when I asked him, I said to him, like, what was it like to work with Eugene 10 years ago? And his response was, high energy, anything was possible, so I thought that was a great, that's what stuck out of my head. It's like, even him as a leader recognizing that, right? Like, it's kind of like, that's not everyone's like that.
I was sweating it a little bit. What is he going to answer?
Yeah, I liked it.
Your famous question, right, of some different scenarios, and you asked him about the startup. Like, I thought it was good, right? Because again, if you try and like be in the flow, and what he meant is yes, in the flow, but in the flow of the healthcare system, right? Like, because people will not do something out of the flow, right? And then I've heard him say this before. It's like, you're not your disease, right? And it's not just him, but like I think he stressed that throughout the discussion as well. Which is where kind of your coach was sort of born as well, right? With Marina, it's like she wasn't defined by cancer, right? It was a small slice of her life.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that was a good, solid. He's a sharp guy, obviously.
Sharp guy, thinking about managing a big system. Like we could have tugged in for there. But I found him very kind of like, I could have sat there and listened to him for for hours. Very methodical thinker, clear thinker. Okay, where are we now?
We're going to Edward Kliphaus, who announced his new gig. I wonder, it's now a couple of weeks in, right? 2 weeks in. I wonder how that's going. I haven't checked in with him. Yeah. But he was just joining Sofinova Ventures. Yeah. Still a bit stealth on, but I think we can all hypothesize what he'll be doing there, but still not announced. My biggest surprise with that discussion, as he joked around that he was sort of, got lost and detained in Azerbaijan. So that's a story that you're gonna have to watch the full episode to listen to it. And of course, we talked, quite a bit. Actually, we talked about conferences, and they're back. I know he's extended an invite to one in Dubai for me. I forget the name of it, but. We talked about Health Excel, HLTH, so some of that. SPACs and the value again came up, right? Value versus valuation.
Yeah, I love the debate that we had. I actually thought it was a good three-way debate about the whole paratherapeutics and valuation, the cynics versus the optimists, or versus the the believers. Like, for me, that was really interesting. I thought, in the fact that he's been in this from the beginning.
Yeah, and like, I just want one quick comment on all of this, right? Because I think you can be either a really like bullish on this or bearish on this. And I think, Pear is occupying so much of the discussions now, probably around the valuation versus the clinical value that's been studied. And, I think, let's face it, they're really the first ones that are doing this. And there's people that are uncomfortable with all of this, right? And cannot maybe see beyond what it is today. And, I think the market will show and the team will show, if it's doable or not, and if they're going to grow into their valuation or it's going to crash and burn. I mean, let's see. But I just wouldn't discount it as many people have, right? So
100%. No, I'm a bull. I mean, I don't know all the insides of, all their situations and circumstances, but like, they're leaders, right? They're leaders in the space. They're obviously excellent communicators, but what they're trying to do. I think of like I said, I think I said it on the show, was like, if you gave a government and you said, if you gave them $500 million to a government managing a 10 million person population and said, digitize and put software wraparounds, around your medicines, people wouldn't think twice about spending that kind of money, if they could, to show because we all know, so they're fundamentally right, like their thesis is right. And it's just a question of like their timing, right? Like, what's the timing, can they build the organization that can execute it correctly?
And can they fill that, Genentech like software pipeline, right? Is it really doable, right? And that's their hypothesis. And they'll either execute beyond, and again, back to kind of grow into the valuation, or we'll see otherwise, right? And I mean, that's the stock market game. Some people lose, some people win.
No,
and
bullish.
then, so we trying to think if there's any big gotchas out of Edward. There's always so much coming out of his brain, right? He's just a brilliant dude. But we did hop over and heard a joke from a German, Eckhard Weber. That's always fantastic. And it wasn't you, Jim, telling the joke. You're gonna have to watch the episode to actually hear it, people. I like I know they've been sort of pushing this quite a bit, but it makes sense. The Vipros, the virtual, I forget what it stands for. It's
interesting.
It's, the virtual care model, right? Micro providers,
integrated management,
virtual integrated
right.
micro providers, right? And it's back to these, companies and startups, very sort of niche and focused virtual health services. How do you pull this together in all of this? So
having, if you add the telehealth plus like a skin digital diagnostic, then you have the full service, and you can seek reimbursement for it, and you might get through telehealth plus the innovation on the other side. I thought that was fascinating. That definitely stirred my thinking in terms of thinking about my own business. I thought also was, I asked, actually, we brought up Diga a couple of times during our series this season, and we brought it up, and and we brought it up with Eckhard, who was kind of in some ways bullish on one side, wanted to support it, but I asked him the question. I said, would the financiers actually value a successful Diga application? And the answer is probably not yet. Not yet. Like it's a piece of the puzzle. But you're not going to get a credit. You're not going to get a lot of credit just for that, because distribution's not figured out.
Exactly. And I think that will also depend on which phase you're investing in, right? As a VC, right? So if you're a Series B and growth VC, you're not going to assign value right today. If you maybe earlier on, that's a benefit. So I think that also depends.
Yeah, it might be a validation of your tech that it works, so you can get through. Yeah, exactly.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah, and across, I actually kind of looked, through the notes. So we did talk quite a lot about sort of these models and virtual care, Vipros. To your point, Diga came up a number of times through this whole thing, through the last, I guess, 2 months now. SPACs and valuations. Can you hear me? Okay. Like, yeah.
Yep, I can.
Okay.
Yep.
SPACs and valuations, because I think we've seen, in those 2 months that we've been doing season 6, right? Just insane amount of deals, right? that are growing, and some great. I actually liked, and maybe that's sort of like my last comment on all this. I like how Edward and then actually Eckhart also turned it on us, like with lots of questions. And Edward was asking us, so what are you seeing the themes by the famous Jim Joyce question? So I really do want us to spend some time, you and I, to kind of parse through that. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like there's so many things. I've been thinking a lot about this in general, like going back and thinking about asking people that question and how they responded to it. Definitely getting, the Jim Joyce is all in a series. Jim Joyce, the time capsule, time lapse.
Oh my God, that would be hilarious, but at the same time, probably so freaking annoying. Like if you hear 2 minutes of that straight up.
I think that speaks to my brand. My brand.
Love it. And that's a wrap. That's a wrap. That's a wrap, man. Season 6. That's crazy, right? That's insane. Just different places, different things happening. Yeah, exciting. I'm excited for what season 7 will bring us.
Yeah, I know. I think season 7, then we kind of bring this whole thing to bed, right? Like we bring it home. I think
so. I was trying to count it. We may need to dip into season 8, depending if we're going to actually do this in October. Or we just, it's our own show. We can just keep the season 7 going by the number of episodes, right? Not 10. So.
Right,
it's all
that's
up
true.
To us.
True. It could be season 7 forever.
Our sponsors now.
It'd be season 7 forever. Now we definitely have to do we have to try to do like an in-person. We have to do an in-person. Maybe when you're in Dublin or we do it in Boston, we'll do an in-person shot of digital health.
Absolutely, man.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, don't be late for your webinar.
Yeah, I need to prep a little bit. This one is meticulously unproduced. The other one, while not produced, but I need to be much more prepared. So anyway.
Prepared, but not produced.
Good seeing you. So we're both at HealthBeacon offices around the world.
Love it. I love it.
That's what I love about this. And over and out, man. Another Wednesday.
Say hi to the staff for me.
We'll do.
All right, mate.
Cheers.
Cheers.